Natalie, I'm really sorry for all the trouble I've caused you, said my mother-in-law with a sad face as I pushed her wheelchair during our walk. Caring for her isn't something I do out of love, but I couldn't just leave her alone at home after my father-in-law passed away early. My name is Natalie. I'm a 45-year-old housewife and work part-time. I've been married to my husband, Kyle, for over 20 years. We have a family of 4, our eldest son, Tyler, is a college student, and our younger son, Ryan, is in high school. But now, there's one more person, making us a family of 5. My mother-in-law broke her leg 6 months ago, and it healed poorly, leading to her needing care. We couldn't let her live alone, and since we built our house 5 years ago with aging in mind, making it accessible, it made sense for her to move in with us. At first, the kids were reluctant, but living together, they've grown fond of their grandmother, as they're not home often anyway. We used to visit my in-laws' house quite a bit, so it hasn't been a big adjustment. So far, mother-in-law, who is good at sewing, has done so without problems, except for an incident when she repaired my eldest son's damaged jeans. But then, trouble struck suddenly. One night, my husband came home late, drunk, and started picking a fight with me. "Hey, where are my clothes?" "They're not folded," he barked. I remembered that I had been at the hospital with my mother-in-law all day and had only managed to bring in his laundry, leaving it in the room. "Sorry, I forgot because I was at the hospital with your mom and ran out of time." That's when my husband exploded in anger. "You're a housewife, aren't you? Can't you do at least that much? Who do you think provides for this family? That's no way to talk. You've never even accompanied your mom to the hospital. Whose parent is she? What? You married into my family. That's the job of the eldest son's wife." I was furious too, but arguing further seemed pointless. I threw his clothes at him and left the room. The next morning, I prepared breakfast as usual, but my husband got up, dressed without a word, and left. "Wait." I called, but it was too late. I heard the door close. Returning to the living room, my mother-in-law, who had just woken up, looked at me worriedly. "Good morning. There was some trouble yesterday." I trailed off, and she mentioned hearing our voices the night before. What's gotten into that boy, she wondered. Indeed, when I married him, my husband had been more easygoing and hardly ever got angry. He never used to drink to excess or speak to me that way. I think he changed when our kids were in elementary and middle school. His colleagues were getting promotions, but he was getting left behind, growing more frustrated the harder he tried. But we've managed to live on his salary, and our kids have grown up. It's true that we're able to live because of my husband's income, but he's always working, and recently he's hardly ever at home during the weekdays. On weekends, he's either sleeping or going out somewhere, so he's never done any household chores. He used to help with housework and was cooperative with childcare. I once suggested he consider changing jobs, but he snapped at me for the first time, saying, "What do you know?" Since then, things haven't been great between us. We're not exactly a couple in name only, but we no longer go out together or do things as a couple. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel lonely, but now my mother-in-law is my conversation partner, and I'm busy accompanying her to the doctor, so I don't think much about my husband anymore. In that sense, it might have been good that we started living with my mother-in-law. That day, my husband didn't come home. It was the first time he didn't return, even though he sometimes comes home late at night. I tried to contact him, but he just replied, "Leave me alone." My mother-in-law sighed. That foolish son of mine, what's he thinking? I wonder if he'll come back eventually. I decided to do as he asked and leave him be. I didn't prepare his meals. Then the weekend arrived, and while watching TV in the living room with my mother-in-law, we heard the front door open. We looked at each other and then towards the entrance. There stood my husband, looking displeased. "You finally came back, now apologize to Natalie," my mother-in-law said. Then he said, "I want divorce." "What?" I blurted out in shock. "I won't be coming back. I'm going to a woman's place." "What?" I couldn't grasp the situation and reacted the same way again. "He probably thinks I won't divorce." I remembered him saying with a laugh that I'd be in trouble if I divorced because I rely on his salary. My mother-in-law started to panic. "Are you saying you're divorcing and leaving?" What about your mother? Kyle snorted. Taking care of her is the eldest son's wife's job. Wait, so she's staying here even if we divorce? That's right, you're the eldest son's wife, so take care of her. I'll leave the house to you. His condescending tone was getting on my nerves. Kyle, what are you talking about? If you divorce Natalie, she won't be your wife anymore, so she can't live with your mother. My mother-in-law was angry, but my husband started spouting nonsensical logic. You married the eldest son. Taking care of the parents is the wife's duty. It would be a problem if you shirk that duty because of a divorce. You're the wife, so housework and caregiving are part of your job. What he said may have sounded logical to him, but to anyone else, it was absurd. I could only sigh. My mother-in-law must have felt the same, as she sighed and looked at me. We locked eyes, and she nodded, and I nodded back. The next moment, she stood up from her wheelchair. All right, let's begin. My husband was speechless, his eyes wide with surprise. I called for my sons in the other room. My athletic sons ran to the living room. Grandma, so it was today, huh? Tyler grinned, and my mother-in-law smirked back. I started to find the situation amusing and laughed as I spoke. All right, let's do this. My sons scattered between the living room and the bedroom, starting to carry out my husband's belongings. My mother-in-law, who you wouldn't believe was just sitting in a wheelchair, walked normally and carried out smaller items. I told him I agreed to divorce. My husband's belongings were neatly lined up in the hallway. I faced my husband, who was looking uneasy, and said, "We're strangers now." Ignoring his confused look, I continued. "I'll send your stuff to Yvonne's place, just write down the address. I'm sure you had a great time with Yvonne, who's 10 years younger than me. Enjoy your life with her." Hearing that name, my husband looked at me in shock. Yvonne from your company, right? Having an affair within the same department, you always lived in such a small world. I laughed sarcastically. You said you were going to a woman's place, right? Go ahead. But just so you know, my life won't change without you. My husband finally seemed to realize that I knew about his affair. His attitude changed dramatically from before, and he started to panic. Wait, hold on, it's not like that. What's not like that? You're divorcing me to be with your mistress, right? Or is there another woman? No, it's not like that. You want a divorce, right? Why change your attitude all of a sudden? Did you bring up divorce just to threaten me, thinking I wouldn't go through with it? Seeing his agitation, it seemed I hit the nail on the head. How will you manage without me? He seemed overly concerned about our future life. Don't worry about it. I'll manage with the money. Wait, why? That's when my impatient sons intervened. Where should we send this stuff? Hurry up and write the address. Reluctantly, my husband wrote down his mistress's address. After making sure he did, my sons bowed to him. Thank you for raising us, they said with a laugh and looked up, leaving my husband with a complicated expression. Then they escorted him out the front door. I could see him walking away slowly outside the window. I couldn't help but laugh at the sight of him. After looking down on others and initiating the divorce himself, what was with that lonely back? Good job, Natalie, my mother-in-law said, placing her hand on my back. Did you see the look on Dad's face when Grandma stood up? Ryan said with a mischievous grin, and we all laughed together. In fact, my mother-in-law's rehabilitation was going well, and her legs had recovered significantly. During a recent hospital visit, the doctor said she could start living without the wheelchair and gradually get used to it. She's been living mostly without the wheelchair now. She was sitting in it earlier because it was the right height for watching TV, and we were planning to buy her a chair soon. She was only using the wheelchair because it was convenient until then. We had anticipated my husband's actions, discussing beforehand that if he mentioned divorce or leaving, we would all pack his belongings and send him away. The boys used to like their dad, but ever since he changed, they barely get responses or advice from him. They appreciate the financial support, but they've said they don't want to rely on him anymore and earn their own money through part-time jobs. The rift between me and my husband had deepened over the years to the point where it could no longer be repaired. My mother-in-law always felt guilty about me taking care of her, but since I reduced my part-time work, she compensates me. She had sold her house, which was too large and empty, for a substantial sum, and we used that money for our living expenses. She assured me that even if I divorced, we could live on that money. My husband probably thought he could throw us into chaos by suddenly demanding a divorce, but in the end, he was the one who was outmaneuvered. Throughout divorce process, I claimed property division and alimony, and the house was transferred to my name. I had been aware of my husband's affair for many years, so I had been gathering evidence gradually. I planned to confront him with it if he denied it this time. But since he admitted it right away, there was no need to press him further. I also claimed alimony from his mistress, which she paid in a lump sum. Apparently, the mistress was single and was about to marry into a wealthy family, but her engagement was broken off when this affair came to light. I wondered why she had an affair with my husband, but he was handsome for his age and looked younger than he was. I heard through the grapevine that her fiancé was wealthy but not particularly handsome, so I guess that's how it went. With the alimony from both of them, I was financially secure for a while. 3 months after the divorce, my ex-husband showed up at our house. "What do you want now?" I responded through the intercom, but it was just a plea for reconciliation. Then my mother-in-law headed towards the entrance. Seeing her walking normally, my ex-husband was shocked. "Mom, why are you here?" "Now, Natalie is my business partner. This is our workplace." "Business partner?" My ex-husband was surprised by many things, but my mother-in-law didn't elaborate much. "More importantly, you have no right to call me Mom. Natalie was the one who suggested we live together and took care of me. You did nothing. Don't call yourself son." I went to the entrance and said my piece, considering it the last time. "I appreciate you providing financially, but you never helped with household chores, barely came home, and even had an affair. Why would I want to restart something with you? The divorce is final, and we are now strangers. If you want to see the boys, contact them directly. But they probably don't want to see you." My ex-husband was speechless and looked a bit sad, but what he had done made this inevitable. "We're getting along well as a family now, so don't bother us. Goodbye." After saying that, I closed the door, and he walked away dejectedly. My mother-in-law, since becoming wheelchair-bound, had a lot of free time and often did sewing, her specialty. She made me some high-quality aprons and hats, which I really liked. When I shared them online, they received a great response. I learned and started selling her creations. My mother-in-law rented a nearby apartment but still uses one of our rooms as a workshop, spending most of her week here, so it's natural for her to be around. My ex-husband doesn't know, but we now have enough income from this business. My mother-in-law seems lively and happy. "Natalie, I wouldn't have been able to sell these if you hadn't taught me. I've already received feedback on the new products. I'm glad to see her happy. Strictly speaking, we're no longer mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but I still call her that, and we get along well. Grandma's here today, right? I bought her favorite sweets," said Tyler, coming home with the sweets in hand. Our home is now more filled with smiles than ever. The boys will eventually leave the nest, but it seems I'll continue to have a good relationship with my mother-in-law.